So we left off on page Kuf Mem Gimel. So Kuf Mem Gimel, the Mechaber writes, Od Amru B'Tainis. So remember again, what Ramchal pointed out over here is as follows. He said, on one hand, he pointed out the concept that those who abstain unnecessarily, he called him Ma'amari Chazal, who said that such behavior is foolishness. Such behavior, and not only is it foolishness, but it's almost antithetical to the Ratzon Hashem. What HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to be is to be happy, well-adjusted people. And so to go ahead and answer things to yourself that are inherently mutter, when there are more than enough things that are already asr, seems to go against the actual will of the Ribono Shel Olam. So he goes on, he says, O Damru, Kala Yoshe B'Tanis, but on the flip side, what we started yesterday was, on the flip side, there's also prishus that seems to be extolled and condoned, right? This prishus, ultimately, again, that is good. So he gives another example. Od Amru Kal Yoshe B'Tainis Nikra Kaddish. The Gemara says, whoever goes ahead and fasts, any person who fasts, is called Kaddish, is called holy. Kal Charmi Nazir. Just as the Nazir ultimately, again, establishes a heightened level of holiness through abstaining from things that may be inherently mutter, like wine and other things, so to any person who abstains from things that may be inherently mutter will also be kaddish. Od Amru, this is also incredible. Furthermore, they said, Tzaddik ochel asav quotes the Pasuk that says that Tzaddik eats until he's sated. Eats until he's sated. So the Gemara says, who does this refer to? Ze Chizkiyahu melech Yehuda. So the Gemara says that this refers to Chizkiyahu Melech Yehuda, King Chizkiyahu, who at his table used to have 1 litra of basar and 2 litrin of vegetables. Now this seems like a monarchially skewed diet, because a king would have access to, of course, much more meat, and therefore would not have to fill up on vegetables. Yet it appears that Chizkiyahu Melech Yehuda ate a lot of vegetables. So what's the pshat? So the Gemara understands that ultimately, again, Chizkiyahu Melech Yehuda did not want to unnecessarily benefit from meat, right? So therefore, again, he ate meat. He did eat meat, but Lamaisa, he abstained to a very large degree, and really, again, was primarily sated by vegetables. So you see a level of precious on the part of Chizkiyahu. O Damru B'Rabbeinu HaKadosh, they said about Rebbe, Shebeshas misaso zakaf eser esbaos va'amar. Such an incredible Gemara that when Rebbe died, he extended all 10 of his fingers and he said, Galui v'yadua lefanecha shelo nehenesi min ha'olam hazeh afilu be'etzba ketana sheli. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you know that I benefited very little from this world. Right? I benefited very little from this world. So we'll say the idea ultimately of extending his 10 fingers, ultimately representing he didn't hold on to, he didn't grasp anything. I benefited very little. Od Amru, Ad Sha'adam Mispalal Divrei Torah, She Yikansu L'Soch Me'erpos. Listen to this. So he goes here with the medrash that says, before a person davens, that Divrei Torah should enter and become part of him, Yispalal Al Achila Ushtia Shelo Yikansu B'Soch Me'av. He should daven that eating and drinking shouldn't become part of him. Well, what does that mean? The same way that I daven, that I become a ruchni individual, and that ruchnius permeates and penetrates me, I should daven that the gashmius doesn't permeate and penetrate me. Pretty amazing. So the Gemara, he goes on. So we'll say, what's the common denominator amongst all of these statements? Hein kol elam ma'amarim morim beferish tzarach haprishus v'chovba. So we'll say, so all of these rabbinic statements, right, rabbinic adages, or just ma'amari chazal, speak about the idea of prishus, the need to separate from things that may be inherently mutter, but ultimately, again, can cause something negative. Amnam, al kol panim, tzrichim anu l'taritz ha'ma'amarim ha'morim hefech. We'll say, here's the problem. What's the problem we have? We now have 2 distinct sets of ma'amari chazal, 2 distinct sets of rabbinic statements. In the first category, they actually, those statements go ahead and say, do not answer things that are mutter. That's the theme. If something is asr, then it's asr. But if it's mutter, there's no need for you to make it asr. Kadosh Baruch Hu wants you to enjoy the world. Kadosh Baruch Hu wants you to enjoy life. Kadosh Baruch Hu wants you to enjoy your ruchnius, wants you to enjoy your gashmius. Whatever needs to be asr, chazal already asred. Don't make anything additional asr for yourself. in the second category of Ma'amari Chazal, we see Chazal extolling those who take on additional prohibitions. Those who go ahead and asr things that all are already permitted. I was going to say asr things that are permitted. It means for yourself. I just want to point that out. Right? It doesn't mean people who enjoy asring things for other people that are permitted. Right? That's the idea. So which one is it? Right? Should I go ahead and make additional isurim for myself or not? Paragraph Hey, page Kuf Mem Gimel. Therefore says the Mechaber, Acha inyan hu, ki vadai chilukim rabim, v'ikarim yish badavar. Says Ramchal, I'll tell you the fundamental distinction. Yesh precious shenetz davinu bo, v'yesh precious shuhus harnu alav leviltlihi kashal bo. So the truth is, says Ramchal, there are two different kinds of precious. There is sanctioned precious, and there is inappropriate precious. There's the kind of precious that is necessary for one's growth, and there's the kind of precious that actually is counterproductive. This is incredible. He says, "V'hu ma'ashamar Shlomo HaMelech alav shalom, al tihi tzadik," page Kuf Mem Daled, al tihi tzadik harbe. This is what Shlomo meant when he said, "Don't be so righteous." Some people are very machmir on this, right? Don't be so righteous. What does he mean? Don't be so righteous. What does that mean? Of course, I want to be so righteous. This is Shlomo HaMelech saying, be careful where you express your personal piety. Be careful with the Niddah of precious. Don't automatically assume that the goal is to be parush in every single situation. He goes on, he says, Univar ata prishutov. So now the Ramchal says, let's analyze. So now what I know is that there is a virtue of precious. I also know that there are ma'amari chazal that tell me not to be parush. So obviously the conclusion I come to is there is good precious and there is detrimental precious. How do I go ahead and explain the difference between the two? He says, Univar ata, we'll at least begin this today. Univar ata, ha-precious ha-tov, v'nomar. So we'll say, let's start with good precious. What's good precious? Ki hine achar she'ezbar lanu hayos kol inyane ha'olam nisonos la'adam. We'll say, now that we've established that everything in this world is an isayon. Right, so we'll say this is the introduction of the Ramchal. The world is a milchama. Life is a milchama. Every day, every situation is an isayon. Ukimo shakasavnu kvar lamala, vochachnu berayos, this ames lanu gam kein rov chulsha sa'adam, vikirvas daitu alaros. We also know that people are weak. We're weak sometimes. And very often, unfortunately, we seem to have a proclivity or predisposition towards negative behaviors. Yisbar behechrich, shekol ma sheyuchal ha'adam lehimalit min hayonim ha'ilu. Ra'oi sheyaseyu k'dei sheyeh nishma yosem min hara shebragleihem. Ki hinei, ein lecha tanug olami, asher lo yimshoch acharav ezechit ba'keva. Rabbi says, listen to this. So says Ramchal, he's defining now what good precious is. What's good precious? When a person says, I know that the following thing is permitted, whatever that thing may be. I know this thing is permitted. But I also know what? I also know that if I engage in this, ultimately, again, it can become a gateway for something else that is prohibited. So I make the personalistic conscious decision to abstain from engaging in activity or behavior or midah A, not because it's usher, but because I know myself. And I know that if I engage in this behavior, unfortunately, it could lead me down a path that I don't want to go. That, says Ramchal, is good precious, because he says something amazing. He says, because one thing you have to know is there is no earthly pleasure that does not have the capacity to pave the way for sin. This is a very important yesod. Now again, what we're saying is, here's the incredibly difficult idea. Earthly pleasure, permitted or prohibited? Mutter aser? Right? Mutter. Technically speaking, again, most pleasures are mutter. They're mutter in some way. The challenge is that every earthly pleasure opens the door for that which comes after it, which could be something that is usher, illegal, and illicit. So I say, so because of that, positive precious comes along and says, okay, I know the line between mutter and asr, but I also know that if I straddle that line, chances are I will fall on the wrong side of it. So what do I choose to proactively do? I choose to go ahead and create additional buffers and barriers for myself so as to safeguard my own ruchnius, my own spirituality. That, says the Ramchal, is positive precious. Derech HaMashal. So we'll say, actually, we'll stop over here for today, but we're going to pick up in Meretz Hashem. What he's going to go through now, and this is actually quite amazing, is each and every different type of behavior, right? So he'll show us different types of physical or earthly behaviors, and ultimately that are inherently mutter, but have the capacity ultimately again to descend into a place we do not want to go. So we end off with understanding this distinction between positive precious and negative precious. Positive precious is where I go ahead and I create additional barriers, create additional isurim for myself in order to safeguard my ruchnius. Negative precious is just answering things for the sake of answering them. Good, we'll stop here. Pick up in Meretz Hashem, page Kuf Mem Dalid tomorrow. So the Mechsi Kiyuara seems to be in things that are just beyond the pale of anything normative. Yes, I think it depends. I think, I'll give you an example. So, leaving aside Chasidim, like the Mishnah Berurah says, that putting on tefillin of Rabbeinu Tam is Mechsi Kiyuara. I know I'm using this, right? So it's different today because the Chasidim do it. But, what's the logic? Because that's not done. It's just not done. Mechsi Kiyuara gets in when when you're adopting a behavior that is so outside the pale of the norm. That's when you have that issue. All right, Rabbi, say good morning. Let's begin. A lot to do today. Today's daf is Mem Tes. We are picking up on Mem Ches Amid Beis. And we're picking up in Meretz Hashem 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 lines up from the bottom. Our shir this morning is dedicated by our Talmud Torah, first by Shmuel and Rachel Newman, for Refuah Shlema for Shmuel's mother, Cyril Mindel Bas Esther. We hope that she, together with Kol Choli Yisrael, have a complete and enduring Refuah. The shir is also dedicated, of course, by our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Kislev, Josh and Becker Freeman, Le'ili Nishmas, Josh's father, Yisrael Yehuda ben Rav Chaim Refoel, and Sammy and Malka Esterson, Le'ili Nishmas, their parents, Yitzchak Leib ben Aaron HaKohen, Sarah Rachel Bas Baruch, and Hinda Bas Henach Ephraim. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, the Neshamas will have an aliyah and the family in a chama. We also dedicate our learning. I'm sure many of us followed the shocking news out of Jersey City yesterday with the terrible attack in a kosher convenience store that has left at least 2 members of the Hasidic community there dead. Young people murdered in cold blood. We'll find out the rest of the news today, but we hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, those neshamas will have an aliyah, the families in a chama, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu will finally say, Dai litzarenu. We'll say, let's begin. Toch HaPerach. So remember again, yesterday we began the discussion about who is going ahead and doing these bedikos, right? In the situation that ultimately, again, you need to do the bedika of a bogeres, or of a nara, I should say, saloch lamay, so who's doing these bedikos? So we saw different opinions, and I will say what it really came down to is we're beginning to see a distinction ultimately in when those bedikos are being done. Because halacha l'maisa bedikos at different stages yield different realities. So we left off with Tocha Parak, right? So remember again, if the bedika is being done Tocha Parak, so we'll say Tocha Parak means the year before Gadlus. So for example, for a girl, this of course would be between 11 and 12 years old. So Tocha Parak ein nashim bolt kos osam. In that case, he holds that women ultimately again cannot conduct that bedika. Kasavar Tocha Parak kila achara Parak. Ula achara Parak diika chazaka derava samchina nanashim ubadki. So we'll say because ultimately again that year leading up to maturation is like afterwards. But afterwards, meaning after a girl reaches the age of 12, we have the chazaka of Rava. There was, remember again, this chazaka of Rava was the statement we ended off with yesterday. A very important thing what Rava said, Kitana she'egia leklal shnosea, eino tzricha bedika, chazaka hevia simanim. Rava says in general, Bosai, we don't do a bedika for a girl when she turns 12. Why? Because we hold like Rava, who says that halacha l'maisa, once a girl reaches the age of maturation, we assume that she has displayed the signs of maturation. However, that chazaka only applies from 12 years old and up, does not apply ultimately again between the ages of 11 and 12. Rabbi Shimon says, Af tocha perak nashim, both goes. Women can even conduct the bedika during that lead-up year. Because he holds ultimately again, before that year, 11 to 12, is like the years which precede it. Ubayi bedika, why would a bedika be necessary? Because if they were to go ahead and find two hairs, let's say, before that lead-up time, or even during that lead-up time, so halacha l'maisa, it would be important to identify those hairs, because even if they were to still be present after the girl turns 12, those are not considered to be pubic hairs or hairs that display physical maturation. Rather, we associate them with a mole. So the Gemara says, the Brisa then said, a woman is believed in her testimony to be machmir but not to be mekel. So hai man katanila. So we'll say, who is the author of this statement? Ibaisim Rabbi Huda. So if you want to say that it's Rabbi Huda v'atocha perek, and it's referring dafka ultimately to the lead-up year, to the ages between 11 and 12, top of Memtes, v'ibaisim Rabbi Shimon, or you could say it's Rabbi Shimon, and it's dealing ultimately again with after the lead-up time, v'lesle chazaka de Rava. And apparently again, according to this approach, he would not subscribe to the chazaka of Rava. Again, the chazaka of Rava being that once a girl turns 12 years old, halacha l'maisa, she has developed signs of physical maturation. Good. So the Mishnah ended off with saying mipnei sha'amru. So we'll say, if you remember again, just to reorient ourselves a little bit. So the way this Mishnah began was a fascinating machlokes about what happens if a girl develops simanim elyonim before simanim tachtonim. So here we had a machlokes Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim. Rabbi Meir said that ultimately again she's not a gedola. Why? Because Rabbi Meir holds that a girl could develop simanim elyonim without developing simanim tachtonim. Chachamim say impossible. Simanim tachtonim always precede simanim elyonim. But this girl has simanim elyonim but not simanim tachtonim. To which the Gemara answers, because Kohen Chacham must have been that what? The hairs were there, but they fell out. The Mishnah then ends off by saying, Mipnei sha'amru, efshar l'tachton lavo ad shelo ba elyon. Because they said, right, that ultimately again the upper signs could come that the lower signs could come before the upper signs. Aval efshar le'elyon lavo ad shelo laba tachton. But it is impossible for the upper signs to occur without the lower signs occurring. So also which is a statement of the Rabbanan. So Gemara says, Hasulamali. I don't understand. Why does the Mishnah need to restate that? In other words, we'll say the last part of the Mishnah is simply restating the position of the Rabbanan, which is that halacha l'maisa simani tachtonim, right, lower signs of maturation, cannot occur without simanim elyon. I'm sorry, let me say that again. The opposite. Simanim elyonim, upper signs of maturation, cannot occur without simani tachtonim. Cannot occur without lower signs. So we learned that. Right? We already said that before in the Mishnah. Why does the Mishnah feel compelled to restate it again at the end? Hasulamali, hatana l'reisha, v'chitema mishum dekabayi l'mistama kirabanan. So maybe you want to say ultimately again, in order to establish the stam Mishnah like the Rabbanan. Okay, pshita. That's obvious. So we'll say it's obvious that the Mishnah reflects the view of the Rabbanan. How so? Because the halacha reflects the view of the Rabbanan. Why? Because yachid v'rabim halacha kirabim. Because we'll say in general in halacha, whenever you have a dispute between an individual and a collective, right, and a group, the halacha always follows the majority opinion. In this case, the majority opinion is the Rabbanan. To which the Gemara says, Ma'udatem, what would you have thought? Mistabra taimad Rabbi Meir. You might have thought ultimately again that maybe Rabbi Meir's logic is a bit more sound. Why? Because he has a pasuk. Remember again in yesterday's daf, so Rabbi Meir was quoting all of these psukim, Shadayim Machonu v'Sarech Tzimeach, right? Speaking about the development of the upper simanim before lower simanim. So you might have thought that because Rabbi Meir has a pasuk, ultimately again he's correct. Kamash Malan, no. Kamash that even though Rabbi Meir brings a pasuk, Rabbi say, we still paskin like the Rabbanan, who ultimately say that what? There are no simane elyonim without simane tachtonim. And even if you find simanim elyonim and there are no simanim tachtonim, that's just because the hairs fell out. The other possibility is mishum de kabayla misne ki yotzebo. Or else the other possibility is because that's why that the end of the previous Mishnah is going to ultimately link to this Mishnah. Or as Rabbi say, thematically we're going to see the past Mishnah and the Mishnah we're about to start are thematically linked. How are they thematically linked? They follow this model of this can be true without this, but this can't be true without this. So it's quite possible that the Mishnah just simply restates the svara of the Rabbanon at the end of the Mishnah, not really in order to reinforce the halacha. We know the halacha follows the Rabbanon, because you have machlokes right and the Rabbanon. Of course, the halacha follows the Rabbanon. Rather, just to stylistically flow better into the next Mishnah. Good. And I will say with that, let us begin the next Mishnah. So it says the Gemara. Fine. We'll say I mean, it's obvious because the Gemara just said it over here, but the way that ultimately, again, the halacha paskins is in conformance with the position of the chachamim. Namely, that the way biologically, the way it works is that a girl will go ahead and have simanim tachtonim before she has simanim elyonim. That's the way it works physiologically. And even if you find simanim elyonim, and you don't find simanim tachtonim, we assume that they were there, they just fell out. Good. Says the Mishnah. We're going to go on a little bit of a tangent. Kiyot sebo. Say along these same lines. This is also the linkage. Kiyot sebo means now they're not really thematically linked, as you're going to see. They're stylistically linked. Kiyot sebo. Kol kli cheres shu machnis umotzi. We'll say so. Ultimately, again, kol kli cheres shu machnis motzi. So I'll say any kli cheres, ultimately again, shehu machnis, that could allow liquid in, also allows liquid out. What does that mean? Take a look at Rashi in the Mishnah. Kol shu machnis, mashke, kishamanicho al hamayim, yesh bo nekev gadol, shamayim nichnas lasocho. So we'll say anytime you have a utensil, a kli cheres, and what happens? The utensil has a hole, to the point that if you were to put the utensil on water or into water, that ultimately, again, the hole is big enough that water comes in. Motzi. Motzi, Rashi says, Kol shekain im nasun hamayim lusocho yotzi amashke lechutz. All the more so that hole will be big enough. That's what? That if water or liquid is inside of the utensil ultimately, again, comes out. So we'll say, apparently what the Mishnah is saying is like this. Interestingly enough, you need a bigger hole for water to go into the kli from outside the kli, than for water to come out from inside the kli. See, anytime a kli cheres has a hole which is large enough to allow water in, water by the just the descriptive of a liquid, whatever liquid, water in, that hole is certainly large enough ultimately to allow water out. You'll see why that matters in just a moment. V'yesh shemotzi ve'ino machnis. But I will say sometimes the kli could have a hole that is only large enough to allow water in, but not to allow water out. I'm sorry, just the opposite. There's a kli that's large enough, thank you. There's a kli that has a hole that is large enough to allow water out, but doesn't allow water in. So both say, so bottom line is, the hole to ultimately go ahead and allow water and to, let me read that again, right? The hole to go ahead and allow water in is larger than the hole to allow water out. Good. Next. So we'll say any limb that has a nail. So this is actually a very interesting one. Rashi says, Kol Eiver is etzba yisera. If someone has an extra finger, someone has a sixth digit, right? A sixth finger. So let's listen to this. If that Eiver has a nail, right? So Kol Eiver sheyesh bo tziporin, yesh bo etzem. So anytime you have a limb that has a nail, it also always has a bone. V'yesh sheyesh bo etzem ve'im bo tziporin. But ultimately, again, some extra limbs which may have a bone do not necessarily have a nail. And I will say now, what's going on over here? Look at Rashi, quite interesting. Kol Eiver etzba yisera sheyesh bo tziporin yesh bo etzem v'havi Eiver chasha. So listen to this. If ultimately, again, so the Mishnah says, if the extra, it calls it an extra limb, but the specific example over here is a finger. So if a person has an extra finger, and that extra finger has a nail, that extra finger has a bone. What's the ramifications of that? V'havi ever chashuv. Rabbi say if it has a bone, then it is considered to be an important limb. What does that do if it's an important limb? Umetame ba'ohel. Rabbi say once something is called an aver chashuv, ultimately again it could convey tumas ohel. Afilu ein bashir dekaim alon. Haivar inlan share. Afilu pachos gezas. We'll say here's the interesting chap. So remember again, halacha l'maisa, if something is deemed an aver, it's metame tumas ohel, no matter how small it may be. If something is not an aver, look at Rashi, v'yesh yesh bo etzem, v'lo have aver, im yiseris hi, aval ina yiseris afila in bat zipar an aver u'metam. You're supposed to listen to this. But however, something ultimately again that is not considered an aver, we're going to see could convey tuma, but ultimately again not tumas ohel. Good. Next, kala metame medris, metame tamime. So we'll say anything that could contract tumas medris can also contract tumas meis. V'yesh metame tami meis, ve'ena metame medris. But there are certain things which could become tami meis, but do not become tame tumas medris. So also remember again, we've learned about tumas medris many times. Under normal circumstances, in order for something to go ahead and have tuma or contract tuma, there must be a base kibul, there must be a receptacle. The exception to this rule is something that, let's say, a zav could lay down on or sit on. Something that a zav could lay down on or sit on is makabel tuma, even if it's flat. So that's what it means, tumas medris. Good. Says the Gemara. Let's analyze this. So now let's start with our kli cheres. So we started off by saying that any kli cheres shumachnis motzi. So we'll say any kli cheres that allows water in certainly allows water out. So remember again, the hole to allow water in is larger than the hole to allow water out. So if it allows water in, it can certainly allow water out. So the Gemara says, what exactly, like, what's the ramification? I mean, what are the ramifications of this? So machnis, I'll tell you why. If a kli has a hole that is large enough to allow water out, pasal mechatos, upasal mishum gistra. And we'll say ultimately again, it cannot be used for mechatos, right? Ultimately, again, if it allows water in, it cannot go ahead and be used for mechatos. So we'll say, what does this mean? Take a look at Rashi. Lemechatos, lekadish bo mechatos, terachmana amar mayim chayim el keli, v'halav klihu. So as well say very simply, if you have a kli that allows water in, then halacha l'maisa, such a kli cannot be used for para aduma. Remember again, you mix the ashes and the water inside of a kli, and halacha l'maisa, this is not a kli if it allows water in. Furthermore, mishum gistra. But it's actually very interesting. Rashi, if you look at Rashi, go a little bit out of order. Rashi says gistra, just Rashi says gistra. Hainu shivrei kli cheres haruyin l'malacha. Let's listen to this. Under normal circumstances, if once a kli breaks, it loses its identity as a kli because it can no longer function as a kli. The exception to this is follows: is if you have a kli that breaks and there is a shard that is still large enough to function in some type of kli capacity, that shard is still makabel tuma. So that's called the gistra. Gistra is called the shard. So look at that Rashi again. Hainu shivrei kli cheres haruyin l'malacha v'adai makabel tuma. So if you have a shard that's still usable in some capacity, it's still makabel tuma. Okay, time being marvei letrefus. Hadakin shebekli cheres hein v'karka oseim v'dafno oseim yoshvin mismacha. Fine. So I'll say, so go back to the previous Rashi. Apostle mishum gistra kilomar kol shekina mikva gistra bekones mashke batalei. So we'll say, so therefore again halacha l'maisa, if you have a shard, but the shard is large enough, it has a hole that is large enough to allow water in, halacha l'maisa, it no longer has the identity of a shard. So I'll say, so again, once it becomes so perforated that again you could allow water in, it doesn't have an identity as a shard. So we'll say, so therefore halacha l'maisa, the Gemara is saying two things. If a kli has a hole that is large enough to allow water in, it cannot be used as a kli for para aduma, and it no longer has the identity as a gistra, as a shard. Next, motzi. What happens, Rabbi say, if the kli has a hole, but it's smaller. So it's so small that what? It doesn't allow water in, but it does what? It does what? Allow water out. So what's the halacha in this case? Motzi kashal mechata. So we'll see, interestingly enough, if the kli has a hole and the hole allows water out, interestingly enough, it is still usable for mechatos, still usable for para aduma. Look at Rashi. Why is it kashal mechatos? The kli shalim benekev katan kuli haylo batos. You will say we often are conditioned to think that once a kli has a hole, it's no longer a kli. So apparently the Gemara is saying that's not true. As long as it's a small enough hole that halacha l'maaseh you could still use the kli. And as we're supposed to remember again, even with the para aduma, you just need to be able to use the kli fast enough that what? That the contents don't fully leak out. Right? So with a hole that is so small that it wouldn't allow water in, but would allow water out, halacha l'maisa, such a kli is kosher for para aduma, but upasel mishum gistera. But halacha l'maisa, it loses its identity as a shard, which we're going to see makes sense because a shard is already a compromised kli. Once you compromise it further, then what? Then halacha l'maisa, it doesn't even have the din of a gistera. Amar Rav Asi says, shonin kli cheres. Shonin, we learned kli cheres shiuro bekones mashke. Right? The shear of a kli cheres, right? Rashi says over here, shonin means halacha l'moshe misinai. Very interesting. The halacha l'moshe misinai is shiuro bekones mashke. That the shear of a kli cheres is ultimately, again, if it allows liquid in. Rashi says, pachos shel shiurim hamevatlim oso mios kli. When does a kli cheres cease to be a kli? When it has a hole that is large enough to allow water in. V'lo amru motzi mashke, and I will say if a kli has a hole that is not large enough to allow water in, but is large enough to allow water out, so ultimately, again, that will not compromise the identity of a kli as a kli cheres. But what? It will go ahead and impact gistera. Right? Elale'inyan gistera bilbad. So we'll say, so remember again, a regular kli cheres, if the hole is large enough to allow water in, it's not a kli. If the hole is smaller, and therefore only allows water out but doesn't allow water in, it still retains its identity as a kli. But a gistra, if you have a shard of a kli that was functioning as a kli, and it develops a hole, and the hole is small, right? It only allows water out, that is no longer a gistra. It's no longer a shard. Why is that? My time, because Rabbi say no one says bring a shard to repair the shard, which is another way of saying, like I said before, the shard is already a compromised kli. So essentially what the halacha is saying is once it becomes compromised more, then halacha l'maaseh no longer has the status of a kli. At a certain point in time, it ceases to be a kli. Tan Rabbanan, both let's analyze this further. Keitzad botkin kli cheres leida imni kev bekonis mashke imlav. So we'll say, how do we check a kli cheres? So remember again, I have a kli cheres that I want to use for para aduma, right? I know that it has a hole. What don't I know? The size of the nature of the hole. Remember again, for para aduma, when does the kli cheres become pasul? Only if what? If it's machnis, if it allows water in, right? If it allows water in, that size of that hole is too large, ultimately invalidates the use of the kli. If it's small enough that it doesn't allow water in but allows water out, it's usable. So what's the test? Keitzad botkin kli cheres leidam nikev bekonis mashke imlav. So very simple. Yavi areva malei mayim v'nosin kedera l'socha. So we'll say it's pretty simple. You bring a trough filled with water, and what do? You put the kli in. Right? V'nosei kedera l'socha. Im kansa, if water comes in, biadua shekones mashke, then ultimately, again, I see that what? I see that water comes in. Ve'im lav, and if water doesn't come in, biadua shemotzi mashke. Right? So we'll say it's a pretty straightforward. You'll see why the Gemara has to go through this exercise. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Huda says no. Rabbi Huda says, I don't like that approach. Rather, here's what you have to do. Kofef oznei kedera l'socha, umatzif aleh mayim. So Rabbi says like this. Here's what you do. You take an empty trough. I say trough, whatever, receptacle. Take the kli, put it in the empty trough, face down. Face down is the wrong word. Upside down, thank you. Upside down, top down. So put the kli inside the empty trough, upside down. Then what? Matzif aleh mayim. Pour water now into the trough. Im kones biadua shekones mashke. If water gets in the kli, then you know for sure that the kli has a hole that is large enough to ultimately allow water in. Vimlav, and if nothing gets in the kli, biadua shemotzi. Shemotzi mashke, right? So ultimately, again, you know that halacha lemaisa, it doesn't allow water in. So we'll say, so what does this mean? So we'll say, look at Rashi. It's actually quite fascinating. Rashi, Rabbi Huda Omer, lo kach boltkinos. Rabbi Huda doesn't like the approach. Who was saying the previous approach? Just the Braisa. Didn't like the approach of the Braisa. Why not? Lokach boltkinos, Rashi says, dahakulahu da'aidi didochik le shulayim amaya aili maya legava. Afilu benakav katra. Listen to this. Rabbi Huda says that's not a proper experiment to see the real size of the hole. Why? Because if you push that kli into a trough filled with water, there's force. And it could be that because of the force, that's why the water gets in through the hole. But again, it could very well be that halacha l'maisa, by itself, that water would not get through the hole. That's why Rabbi Huda likes his model a little bit better. Put the upside down kli into the trough, pour the water in, there's less what he calls dechika, right? I'm sorry? Buoyancy, pressure, good. Dechika. So therefore, there's less force being pushed upon the kli, and therefore it's a truer test to see the nature of the hole. Okay, good. So we'll finish that. Rashi says, "Lo kach bot kinosa da hakulahu da aidi didachik lehu l'shulayim amaya aili maya legava." Because of the pressure of the water, the force of the water goes inside the kli. Afilu benekev katan, even in a much smaller hole. So I'll say. So what Rabbi Huda is saying is, here's the problem. So here's what I will say. We know that it's a larger hole that allows water in and a smaller hole that allows water out. That we know. What Rabbi Huda is concerned about is it could very well be that even in a much smaller hole, right, with this experiment, the water will get in, but not because it's really a hole that's machnis, but because of the effort, expounded by the water. Fine. Says the Gemara. Go back to the Gemara. Oh, another passage according to Rabbi Huda is shov sa'al gabe ha'ar. So both say, or what you could do is fill the pot with liquid and put it on top of fire. Ima or ma'amida. So both say ultimately again, if the fire keeps the liquid inside of the pot, right? Biadua shemotzi mashke. Then I know I both say that what? That this is a hole, that a smaller hole that allows liquid out but doesn't allow liquid in. V'im lav, but ultimately again, if the liquid comes out of the hole even while the pot is on the fire, bi'adur shemachnis mashke, then I know ultimately again that this hole is large enough to allow liquid in. So we'll say, this is very interesting. So apparently, there's this idea that fire, that I guess the heat of the fire somehow keeps the water inside of the utensil a bit more. Okay, Rabbi Yossi says, aflo shov sal gabe ha'or. Rabbi Yossi doesn't like the fire test. Why not? Mipnei sha'or ma'amida. Because ultimately, again, I guess the heat, whatever the properties are, but the heat, right, keeps the liquid inside and will not give you a true insight into the nature of the hole. Ella shov sa'al gabe ha'remes. So rather, what should you do? Take the pot, fill it with liquid, and put it on coals. Don't put it on fire, coals. So therefore, again, this way there's heat. This where there's heat, but not too much heat. Imrametz ma'amida, if the heat of the coals keeps the water inside the pot, inside the kli cheres, bi'adua shemotzi mashke. Then I know that what? That the hole is small enough that it only allows for water to go out, but doesn't allow for water to come in. Ve'im lav, but if not, bi'adua shekonis mashke. If the water comes out even when the pot is on top of the coals, haloch l'maisa, this is a hole that is large enough ultimately to go ahead and allow water in as well. Okay. Hayatore tipa achar tipa. What happens if halacha l'maisa, the kli cheres is allowing drop after drop to come out? Look at Rashi. Hayatore tipa achar tipa. Kilomar v'zu nami bedika im nasan l'socha mayim ve'yotzin tif achar tif biadua shekonis mashke. So Rabbi say, if in general, when you fill, if there's a hole in the kli cheres and you fill it up and water drips out drop after drop after drop, that's indicative that what? That halacha l'maisa, it's motzi mashke, right? That's pretty indicative then that halacha l'maisa, this allows for this is a hole that is large enough for liquid to come out. So the Gemara says, for liquid to come out, yes. Ve'im lav, and if not, bi'adur shekonis mashke, then ultimately again this would not be a hole big enough to allow liquid out, but would allow liquid in. Good. So the Gemara says, ma'ika. I'm sorry. So we'll say, what exactly is the nafkamina between Rabbi Huda and the Tanakama? So we'll say, so now the Gemara is going back for just a moment. Remember again, Rabbi Huda and the Tanakama had different approaches as to how you test how you test a hole in a kli cheres, right? The Tanakama said that what? Fill up the trough, put the utensil in the trough, see if the water goes in. If the water goes in, then ultimately, again, the hole is large enough to allow water in, right? If Rabbi Huda doesn't like that, rather he says, again, put the utensil inverted into an empty trough, pour water on. What's the nafkamina? Amr ula, kinus ayadiad chak iga benahu. So I'll say, so the nafkamina would be, what happens if water enters the utensil ayadiad chak, through pressure that is applied? The Tanakama will hold that's still a good indicator that ultimately, again, of the nature of the hole that it allows liquid in. Rabbi Huda says that is not a good indicator. Good. Call Aver Sheish Bo Tziporin. So also remember again we said any limb, the way the Mishnah said it was any limb. And again, Rashi points out, they're talking specifically over here about an extra finger. So any limb, call Aver Sheish Bo Tziporin Yishbazim. If it has a nail, it also has a bone. It also has a bone. But there are limbs that have bones that do not have nails. So says the Gemara, Yesh Bo Tziporen. So we'll say if it has a nail, therefore by definition, what else does it have? It has a bone. If that's the case, Yesh Bo Tziporen, Mitame bemaga ubemasa ubaohel. We'll say such a limb. Now obviously we're talking about when we say this limb conveys tumah, in what state? When it's detached, right? Obviously, we're not talking about when it's on your hand. Right? So the Gemara says, Yesh bo tziporen. So if the extra finger has a nail, therefore by definition also has a bone, therefore it could convey tumah mitami b'mago, right? Contact, masa, carrying, and ba'ohel. Yesh bo etzem ve'im bo tziporen. But if it has a bone but doesn't have a nail, therefore again, I will say it's not reckoned as a complete aver. Mitami b'mago b'masa. It conveys tumah through maga and masa. Ve'eno mitami ba'ohel. But ultimately, again, does not convey tumah. So I will say only. Look at Rashi. Eno mitami ba'ohel. Rashi says. Well, first of all, look at the previous Rashi. Mitami b'maga b'masa ba'ohel. Tave aver chashuv. So I'll say. So remember again. Once something is an aver, so by definition, it conveys tumah. No matter what the shear is, right? No matter how big or how small that aver is, it conveys tumah. Masha'en kain, if it's not an aver, when Rashi says eno matayim ba'ohel, adi kizai. So I'll say, so the statement is a little bit not misleading, but it has to be explained. When we say that if it doesn't have a nail, right, it doesn't convey tumas ohel, that means it doesn't convey tumas ohel if it's pachos mikashir. But if there is a kazayis of it, then enochinami it will convey tumas ohel as well. So remember, if something is an aver, it conveys tumas ohel no matter what the shear of the item is. If something is not an aver, it can convey tumas ohel as long as there is the requisite shear. Adika kazayis basar, Rashi says. Rav Chisda said, Davar zer Rabbeinu Agadol Amru. Hamakum yeh be'ozra. So this is actually very beautiful. So Rav Chisda said, Rebbe, right? Rabbeinu Agadol used to say this. Actually, he changes it over here to Rebbe. Rashi says Rav, but the Agos Tzidum changes it to Rebbe. So the Gemara says Rebbe used to say this. Rabbeinu Agadol Amar. Davar zer Rabbeinu Agadol Amar. Hamakum yeh be'ozra. Kadosh Baruch Hu should always help him in all of his teachings. Right, he says, "Etzba yisir sheyesh bo etzem ve'im bo tziporin." If you have an extra finger, so we'll say here the lashon of the brayso is just Rebbe's lashon is just a little bit different. The lashon of our Mishnah was aver. Rebbe's lashon is a bit more clear and distinct. Rebbe says not just an aver. What are we talking about over here? Etzba yisera. If a person has an extra finger. Person has an extra finger. So etzba yisir sheyesh bo etzem ve'im bo tziporen. If the extra finger has a bone but doesn't have a nail, mitame b'maga ubemasa. It has the ability to convey tumah through maga and masa. Ve'ino mitame ba'ohel. But ultimately, again, it does not convey tumas ohel. So we'll say, so remember again, this has the etzem, doesn't have a tziporen. Without the tziporen, it doesn't have the din of an aver. Without being an aver, it is mitami maga masa, but not mitami ba'ol. So when we say not mitami ba'ol, what does that mean? It's not mitami ba'ol until when? Until when? Until you have a kizayis. Amrav arachana Rabbi Yochanan ukisheino nisperes al gavayad. We'll say, when is that true? When is that true? That if it doesn't have a nail, it's not mitame tumas ohel. That's only when it's not arranged normally on the hand. So we'll say what that means is as follows. If you have a sixth finger, I don't know exactly how this looks, but I guess if you have a sixth finger, and the sixth finger kind of just, you have a picture in there, Gavi? No, I'm sorry. Right, so you have a sixth finger that comes out and it looks like it's arranged normally on the hand. What the Gemara is saying over here is that has the din of an aver, even if it doesn't have a nail. Right? Why? Because again, it looks like one of the digits. When we talk about a sixth finger only having a din of an aver, if it has a nail, but if it doesn't have a nail, it's not an aver, that's when that digit doesn't look like, or is not arranged like the rest of the fingers on the hand. Okay? Weiter. Kol hamitame midras. So also remember again, the Mishnah said, anything that is mitame tumas medris is mitame tumas mace. And yet, anything that's metame tumas mace isn't necessarily metame tumas medris. So says the Gemara, let's analyze this. Kol v'chazi lemedris metame tame mace. Anything that is fit to contract tumas medris also has the ability to contract tumas mace. V'yesh shemetame tame mace, but yet there are certain things that could become tame tumas mace. Ve'eno metame medris, but halacha l'maisa do not become tame tumas medris. Lasui marabo. So what could this come to include? Lasui sa'av tarkov. Rabbi says, so the example of this would be sa'a and tarkov. We'll say sa'a and tarkov are utensils. The utensils that were used to measure a sa'a, utensils are used to measure a tarkov. So these utensils, their names became known based on the measurements that they held. So you could have a sa'a kli, a tarkov kli. So I'll say, so look at Rashi. Lasui sa'a tarkov, she'inon medras hazav l'tamei adam v'kelim. Aval tamei tumas meis. So apparently, these utensils cannot become ultimately again tamei tumas medras, but they can become tamei tumas meis. This sign, you listen to this because we learned in a brisa. V'hayoshev alakli. So we'll say, so the pasuk says, V'hayoshev alakli asher yeshev alav azav yichabis begader. We'll say, if you sit on a kli that the zav sat on, you contract tumah. That's called tumas medras, right? So if a zav sits on something, he conveys tumas medras to that item, to that kli, and that kli could then subsequently convey tumah to another person who sits on it. So watch this. Says the Gemara, Yachol kafa sa'av yashav alal takav yashav alal yei tameh. I'm at a thought. They will say if the zav takes one of these utensils, a sa'a utensil or a taka, we'll say imagine these as like crates, right? He takes a sa'a crate or a tarkov crate, and what does he do? Zav turns it upside down. He sits on it. You might have thought ultimately again, therefore these utensils contract tumas medris. Talmud lomar asher yashav alav hazav. Asher yeshav alav hazav. Positive that which the zav will sit on. Rabbi say, what does this refer to? Ni shemiyuchad liyeshiva. Rabbi say this refers dafka to utensils that are meant for sitting. Utensils that are meant for sitting is interesting. Yatzazeh, this comes to exclude the sa'a and tarkov, because Rabbi say what happens if somebody sits, right? What happens if the zav sits on the sa'a tarkov? What's going to happen? Zeh she'omrim lo amod v'naseh malachtenu. Rabbi say what happens if the zav sits on the sa'a and tarkov? What's going to happen? Right? The only utensil is going to say, get up, get up. I have to get to work, right? Remember, we're going to both say these are measuring utensils. So by definition, again, this is not my living room couch, right? So it's work utensils. So this type of utensil is going to be the kind of thing where the zav's going to sit and someone's going to say, "Can you please get up? I have to get back to work." So we'll say, so amazingly enough, the din ultimately of tumas medris only applies to something which is normally used for sitting. But just because the zav ends up sitting on something, if it's an item ultimately, again, that is not really used for yeshiva, not used for sitting purposes, it does not contract tumas medris. Pretty amazing. But we'll say next, along the same themes, we have some really fascinating mishnayos here. Fascinating. Kala roi ladon dine nefashus, roi ladon dine mamanas. Let's listen to this. Any judge who is fit to adjudicate capital cases is fit to adjudicate monetary cases. We'll say that makes sense. In other words, we would assume that the level of what's the right word? Expertise. The level of this is not even knowledge. This is fitness. The level of fitness required to adjudicate capital cases is going to be much higher than monetary cases. So therefore the Mishnah says any dayan who is fit to adjudicate a capital case can certainly go ahead and adjudicate a monetary case. However, the yesh sharai ladon dine mamanis ve'ino ron lidei dine v'hashmo, but it doesn't necessarily work in the reverse. In other words, you could have dayanim who are fit to go ahead and adjudicate monetary cases, but are not fit to go ahead and adjudicate capital cases. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Yehuda, who are we talking about over here? So this is actually quite fascinating. Amar Rav Yehuda, la'asui mamzer. So both say, so here's what's interesting. You see, when you look at this Mishnah, you would kind of assume, are we talking about knowledge? Like, is that what we're talking about? If you're smart enough to adjudicate a capital case, you're smart enough to adjudicate a monetary case, but just because you're smart enough to adjudicate the monetary case, you're not necessarily smart enough to adjudicate a capital case, that doesn't seem to make sense, because they're both say, again, it goes without saying that you need knowledge in order to be able to adjudicate the case. So rather, the Gemara understands we're not talking about knowledge as much as we're talking about status. So look at this. Amar Rav Yehuda la'asuye mamzer. We're coming to include a mamzer. So remember again, a technical mamzer, not a colloquial mamzer. Right? So both say, so what does this mean? Look at Rashi. La'asuye mamzer, the kasher ledine mamanis, upasa ledine nefashas. Shabbos says we're going to see a mamzer is permitted to go ahead and be a dayan, right? Remember again, the Gemara talks about a mamzer Talmud Chacham, right? And the level of cover you're obligated to have for a mamzer Talmud Chacham. But a mamzer dayan is permitted to adjudicate financial cases, monetary cases, is not permitted to adjudicate capital cases. Now, interestingly enough, the Gemara Rashi quotes over here, the kashal dine mamanis, upasal dine nefashas kedichsev, kulach yafa ra'ayasi. So we'll say actually quite amazing. The Gemara in Meseches Sanhedrin learns this out from the pasuk. From the pasuk in Shir Hashirim. Kula yafa ra'ayasi. We'll say the drasha that it makes it is from umum ein bach. There is no mum in you. So how the Gemara ultimately uses that pasuk to tell me that it's talking about a judge of a capital case, we'll leave that from Masechah Sanhedrin. I'll say, but the idea over here is in order to go ahead and adjudicate capital cases, you must satisfy the criteria of umum ein bach. So we'll say, well, who could satisfy that criteria? So the idea is no obvious discernible mum. But a mamzer, of course, does have a mum. We'll say it's just an interesting din in mamzer. The mamzer himself does have a mum, even though, again, of course, through no fault of himself, of his own. But Lamaisa, there is a severe genealogical blemish. So because of that, the mamzer is permitted to adjudicate capital cases, monetary cases, cannot adjudicate capital cases. Tanina, Chada, Zimna, but we already learned this before. Hakol ksherin ladun dinei mamanis, ve'ena kol ksherin ladun dinei nefashas. So we'll say we already learned this halacha once before. This is already mentioned in Masechah Sanhedrin. Everyone is kosher to go ahead and adjudicate financial cases, but not everyone is permitted to adjudicate capital cases. Va'avinan ba, and we asked on that Gemara, la'asuyemai, who are you coming to include in this statement? Va'amar Rav Yehuda la'asuye mamzer. So we already had this halacha before. In other words, why does the Mishnah have to restate this? We already learned before that although a mamzer is fit to adjudicate financial cases, he is not fit to adjudicate capital cases. I'll tell you why, says the Gemara. Chada la'asuye ger, v'chada la'asuye mamzer. The truth is, Rabbi say, it's actually the two different Mishnayos teach us two different halachas. One is to exclude the convert, and one is to exclude the mamzer. So halacha l'maisa, a ger and a mamzer can both be dayanim ultimately for what? For financial cases, but do not have the right to serve as dayanim ultimately for what purpose? For capital cases. Both are covered under the same exclusion of hine yafach raya si umum ein bach. Both the ger as well as the mamzer have a mum. There's a genealogical blemish. So because of that halacha l'maisa, they cannot serve as dayanim for capital cases. So the Gemara says tzrichi. The Rebbe said, interestingly enough, I could have easily learned out one from the other. Why do I need to learn out both separately? I'll tell you why. Tzrichi. Tiyashmuin and ger, because if it would have just said ger, I would have said mishum d'ray lava lakal. I will say the reason that ger is permitted to go ahead and adjudicate DNA mamanis cases is because the ger is a full-fledged Jew, right? There's no limitations on the ger. Ava mamzer de'enra lavo bakal imolo, but a mamzer will say who is not permitted to come into the assembly. Right? Remember again, a mamzer has a very, very, very restricted marriage pool. I would have thought that maybe he's not even permitted to adjudicate financial cases. Emalo, the Ashmin Mamzer, if we would have just said Mamzer, Mishum Dakaasi Mitipa Kshera. So we'll say, this is very interesting. The Mamzer comes from Tipa Kshera. Right? So what does it come from Tipa Kshera? The Mamzer comes from who? Jewish parents, albeit it was an illicit union, but he comes from Jewish parents. Aval ger dakaasi mitipa psula imalo, but a ger who comes from tipa psula, right? From Gentile parents, I might have thought that he can't even adjudicate financial cases. Therefore, tzvicha. Therefore, I will say, bottom line, halacha l'maisa, the Mishnah teaches me, anyone who is fit to adjudicate capital cases can adjudicate financial cases, but not everyone who could adjudicate financial cases is permitted to adjudicate capital cases. Who is this coming to include? Specifically says the Gemara, the ger and the mamzer. Both are permitted to adjudicate financial cases, not permitted to adjudicate capital cases. So we'll say we'll begin at least the next Mishnah, just so we have a minute or two. Kala kasher ladun, kasher lahaid. We'll say next case, interestingly enough, whoever is kasher to go ahead and judge is kasher in order to be a witness. V'yesh shekasher lahaid ve'eno kasher ladun. But there are some people ultimately again who are permitted to give testimony, but are not permitted to go ahead and judge. Okay, so it makes sense, right? Anyone who's fit to be a judge is fit to be a witness, but not everyone who's fit to be a witness is fit to be a judge. Says the Gemara la'asuye ma'ir. This is actually fascinating. Who is this coming to include? Amr Rabbi Yochanan la'asuye suma ba'achas me'inav. It's coming to exclude someone who is blind in one of their eyes. Look at Rashi. Last Rashi and left. The kasher lahaid. We'll say someone who's blind in one eye is permitted to give testimony. You could be a witness. But interestingly enough, the ino kasher ladun. I will say fascinatingly is not permitted to be a judge. Why not? This is amazing. So both say, so obviously if you're blind in both eyes, you can't give testimony. Right? So therefore halacha, the Gemara says, for to be a judge, you need both eyes. But ultimately, again, to go ahead and be a witness, you only need one eye. So the Gemara says, Ummani, whose opinion is? Well, so just the one line, with the top of nun. Ummani, whose opinion does this reflect? Rabbi Meir. This was Rabbi Meir. So we'll stop over here. We'll pick up Emirat Hashem with the opinion of Rabbi Meir, Emirat Hashem tomorrow. Shechem Hossein.